In this video, I will challenge myself to draw in Paint 3D, since it will be discontinued on November 4th, 2024. And as I wonder how come it's being discontinued, I wanted to see what it's like to use. Here's what I'll be talking about in this order: the drawing itself, the redraw, my thoughts on the challenge, and recommendations. A small reminder that in these challenges, I attempt to make the drawing look as close to my usual style as I can. I feel this is the best way to explore the differences that come from these challenges. And with that, let's go! The drawing itself. I did do a concept sketch to have an idea to work from before beginning in Paint. The drawing is Elliot and I dressed up as dinosaurs for Halloween. Makes sense for an end of October video to me. I also thought it would be cute. So I need to get this out of the way. This is a weird program to me. I mean, so is MS Paint, and I also did do a video about drawing in that program, but this is the first time I've ever really used Paint 3D. Outside of resizing images and such things. So, Paint 3D has transparent backgrounds, which might make you think I could work in pseudo layers, but that's actually kinda hard to do here. The bucket tool does not have the power to fill with transparency, and also it's a bit more fuzzy than in MS Paint. You might have thought this would be very similar to MS Paint, because I sure did, but it really isn't at all. I thought I would want to implement using the 3D features to make this challenge more of a challenge, but no, it was seriously challenging enough without using 3D assets, so I decided not to. So without being able to do my pseudo layer technique that I used in MS Paint, I would have to nearly do a one layer challenge. I thought I could get away with doing pseudo layering for the background and just pasting my drawing on top the way I do with pseudo layers. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. So I sketch using the tool named Pixel Pen, and that's generally the tool I decide to use here. I get all the shapes in my sketch and decide I'm done with it. I'm thinking I should pick the darker color for the sketch in order to better color. But that shouldn't be a big deal or anything. I'll just use the bucket tool. Well, my once sharp red lines are now blurry dark purple lines. None of these options are optimal. I consider my options and opt to deal with the blurry lines. The color picker isn't the best, but I pick away and get everything colored, partly drawing over the blurry sketch lines a bit as I go. Then I do shading, followed by highlighting. There isn't any layering, as I've been mentioning, so I color pick the colors manually and plop them in, which is a lot more work than a blend mode layer. Then, line art time. Since my line art is usually colored, I have to pick the colors, also manually, draw around everything in the correct colors, fill in and erase the colors, and sketch as needed. I'm sure I missed a few pixels here and there, but that's sorta inevitable in this program. Then for my background trick. You might notice that I've had the background of the drawing transparent so far. That was just to make this part easier. So I decided where my background shape goes and make a lighter color around it, and save that, with the shape being transparent. I then do the motif in the shape, and insert the light colored background on top of it. Clean background shape with a motif. This is what I think is probably the most successful part of this drawing when it comes to hitting my usual style. Then I insert Elliot and I, and immediately draw over us to make an outline. I thought at first I could take advantage of the tools being able to draw semi-transparent for the outline, but had forgotten it can draw over itself and make it not transparent, and trying not to re-step anything would be way harder and not worth the small difference it would make. I paste Elliot and I over top again, and I'd earlier spotted this filter tab in Paint 3D, so I thought I could use that to put on some pinkish purplish color, like I would normally do in my preferred drawing program, but it barely seemed to do anything on the 2D plane. I don't know about 3D shapes, and there wasn't any customization options, and I really should have checked how it worked before I just thought I could use it. Anyway, scrap that. And I thought, there's shapes and you can control the transparency, so I just make a pick box over the entire drawing and make it like 5 to 10%, and then do the same with the purple box, which did help it look more like my style, even though I couldn't use blending modes. I signed my drawing and I am done. The redraw. So to fairly compare my challenge pieces to my normal style, I redraw the drawing how I normally would, and so this is that. I definitely had been missing all of my usual comforts. My navigator, my layers, my blend modes, my color picker. What I'm trying to say is it was nice to be home. I always attempt to use the navigator out of habit when I'm in a different program and just accidentally do stuff and have to undo it, and it's super annoying. I'd say the most notable thing is I made my skin color far too dark in the paint version. You can also tell that the shapes of everything is much different. I think that has a lot to do with being more scared to mess up in paint. Especially with the lack of layers, everything felt so permanent, making me more stiff in my shapes, where I'm way more comfortable in my usual drawing program. My thoughts on this challenge. It was so weird. I think I feel this way because I really haven't tried this program before. With previous challenges, I have somewhat tried it at some point, at least a little, but not this one. And I think I just imagined this would be a lot like MS Paint, but with 3D assets, and maybe like slight differences and upgrades. But there's no secondary color, the selection tool can only be a square, the color picker is definitely better than MS Paint's, but that's not saying a lot. Every time I ran into something, I tended to think it was a weird choice. And maybe it makes sense for the 3D part of the program? I wouldn't entirely know. That being said, I don't think it's bad. I think it's pretty intuitive, and you can definitely get used to most of the weird things. Let's move on to recommendations. Most likely, once you see this challenge, this program will be hard to get a hold of. As I mentioned in the beginning, it will be discontinued on November 4th, 2024. This means you can't just get it through Microsoft Store anymore. And while I'm sure you can find it somewhere, potentially shady, on the internet, be careful with that. But say you have the program, maybe just left over from before it was discontinued. Should you try drawing in it? I don't think I recommend it, which is weird. You see, usually I try to find a positive angle and be like, I think this type of person would enjoy this. But I just think it's not very good for drawing. That being said, I don't think it should have been discontinued the way it's going to be. I think most people knows this program isn't for artists. MS Paint wasn't either, but MS Paint helped me get into digital art. Back when I was a little kid with just a computer and a mouse. And I think this program has been and could have continued to be a place people start a 3D art journey, especially for kids. I didn't go into it because I thought the challenge was big enough without it, but what I did play around with from the 3D shapes, I had fun and it was intuitive to me. It reminded me of how I felt with MS Paint so long ago. Like, maybe I should check out 3D modeling at some point. So, I am sad to see it go. Frankly, I have no idea why they wouldn't let it stay on the store, and Microsoft doesn't seem to want to say. Maybe it isn't being used much by users? And maybe it's fair not to want to update it any further. I wouldn't know. But I think they should keep a legal and safe way to get the program as is. As far as I can tell, there are people who use this program frequently. What if they get a new computer? They're just out of luck. I think that's so mean, and unnecessarily so. Microsoft is a giant company. They could keep it in their store. It cost them pennies at most. All in all, this video is me saying goodbye to a program I regret not getting to know earlier. I was always planning on making a video like this at some point, but with the announcement of it being discontinued soon, I thought it'd be nice to get there before it was. I have described weird choices here and things I don't like, because that is what my challenges are about. They're about me overcoming the challenge of an unfamiliar concept. But at the same time, I think it has charm. I can see it being a good place to start. I do frequently also use it for cropping and resizing images. Overall, I do like the UI more than I do MS Paint. It's just a shame it never took off, and now probably never will. Anyways, that was my thoughts on Paint 3D. And so, bye.